out of bed every day, and I just said, Lord, give me a measure of your wisdom for today, and let me have some energy so I can serve you. And so I've done that for a long time now, and there have been 2 days, and I'm into 7+ years in Congress, where I either walked by St. Peter's or I walked by the Dome, and I looked up there, and 2 days in those years that I thought, do I really want to do this today? You know, it's kind of like going out to milk the cows and it's 20 below. Do you really want to go do this today? They need it, you know, the cows are calling, but it's not so nice. And the first day that happened, I passed it off. And about 6 weeks later, it happened again. And I looked up at that Dome, and why did that thought creep in on me? And I know that there are thousands of people that are sitting on planes at that moment that are arriving in Washington, D.C., that will pay a plane ticket and 2 hotel rooms and a return flight for the chance to go into their member's office and maybe see a member of Congress, like Todd's going to be, or even 15 minutes with staff. How could I think I don't want to do this? I didn't, and so it just put it back in perspective. That thought's never crept in again. It's been about 2 years ago since that's happened. What would I do there? I want to be involved in this debate. And being from Iowa, I know the presidential candidates will come and knock on my door and sit down, and we'll have those philosophical conversations about where they live, and philosophically. And I want to know what their vision is for America's destiny. And I want to challenge them on that. I want to engage in the debate as much as I can. I want to go to New Hampshire a little bit and see what it feels like there. I spent a little time in South Carolina and pretty comfortable with what they think in South Carolina. I think that it's a bit different in Michigan, but I like what I feel here in Florida a lot. I'm not preparing myself to run for president. I'm preparing to be engaged in the debate as much as I can. And if we can shape someone to do this who has a vision for America's destiny that's a full spectrum conservative like we are here, then that's great. Let somebody else do this. And if there's not a groundswell that starts, then it would be foolish of me to think of it as an idea that I was, because it is not about me. I can tell you that I love the privilege of serving America in Congress. I'm eager to do it every day with those 2 that I talked about, but I don't know what destiny holds, and I didn't know I'd be called to run for the state senate or for Congress for that matter, so we'll see what happens. And I don't know that that's a very straight answer, Tom, but that's what's in my head right now.
And then the last question, but one thing that I talked to Steve about was important to me, and it was a lot important to constitutional conservatives. The fair tax is so important to so many people out there. Seeing that as the trigger for creating wealth and taking us out of this bad economy and creating up that, it's really important to a lot of us that there is a conservative like Steve that's going to run be on the Republican presidential nomination, somebody that we can really support. And a lot of the people you're seeing right now, they're talking about, nobody's, last time we had Governor Huckabee run, and he came close. And this fair tax thing is gaining movement, big move. So it's important to me, I talked to Steve, that I want to make sure whether it's him or whatnot, that we have somebody that's going to run the fair tax. It's a great conservative leader, and that people have that voice to keep that momentum. And, so I hope he does. I'm glad he's out there. He's one of the national figures. There aren't a lot that are not just conservatives fighting the healthcare battle and fighting these, but just fighting fair tax with us. Not just in the background. Steve's out there in front. So, we just need to encourage people like him to, hey, we want to, you to have power. We want you to have influence. I hope he keeps considering it.
I've heard a lot of speeches, and you really say what needs to be said.
It was funny because I'll touch real last quick thing on Steve that's funny for me. I was so excited, that we listen to Glenn Beck, a lot of us all the time, and I just knew if you ever talked to Steve that they get along great, because you can tell that historical, very similar. Like they know history.
Oh yeah.
They have that whole perspective of the founders and history, and beyond just the less tax, less government thing. And so sure enough, I'm driving along, and Steve's on Glenn Beck's show first time. And then, like 12 minutes, I'm hearing Glenn Beck say, "Where have you been? I love you." I mean, it wouldn't take me 10 minutes. He doesn't even put he doesn't even like politicians. Doesn't put anybody in the show.
What did he say about the tickle fight?
That was like the worst episode ever.
But
Tickle me, Elmo.
And there are a lot of people that speaking the same language, and it was really great. But that whole Glenn Beck right away support is gaining Steve a lot of national public, which is exactly what we want. So I'd be really encouraged. I'm encouraged for his future, whatever he decides to do.
I hope this is worthy of the last question of the night.
thank you, first of all, for coming out to Florida.
We'll do one more.
Spending time with
If
us.
it's not worthy, we're taking another one. See what that?
Oh, okay.
All right, good, everybody.
As passionate and frustrated and angry as we all are, that brings us here together, no matter where you are, coast to coast. How do you deal with it on a daily basis in those halls of putting up with this insanity? How do you do it as a person?
Well, you know, I do have a lot of people come to me and say, you know, don't give up your fighting spirit. Don't get discouraged. I watch some of my colleagues that get discouraged, and they might sit around and occasionally I'll call a meeting together, which I'm actually doing tomorrow night. There are about 10 of us that are really solid, locked down conservatives, and they're in a distribution list of my BlackBerry, and I'll hear them say, I'm not making enough difference. I think I'm just going to go somewhere where I can make more difference. And I said, wait a minute, where can you go where you can make more difference? You give up your vote, you've given up the bully pulpit, you better have some place to step to that is a little more clear than what I'm hearing. But don't you know, it gets discouraging to take on Nancy Pelosi and the power of that gavel on a daily basis. And so one of them is that I know I'm going to be judged by what I do with the gifts and the tools that I've been given. It isn't by grace alone, really, and that's nice to think that, but I've been more than that, and so because of that, I'm going to be judged more severely by that. Now, I don't live in fear of it. It's a gift, and so it's my job to use that gift to the maximum. And then that's true for a lot of people. But I have to put this other little leveler in here and this and that, and I tell my colleagues when they get dispirited this, draw your strength from the joy of the battle. And now think about what that's like. If you love the fight, and they keep running over you, and they bring it at you over and over again, then you just go take them on. And after they get tired of attacking, then you get up and go find them and you go take them on. And you know, if you draw your strength from the joy of the battle, you'll never be discouraged. One day I had to go. I do what I call an ambush of the chair of the immigration subcommittee, Zoe Lofgren from California, and we have a fair number of clashes because we're complete opposites philosophically, and if we're the two alone in the elevator, she won't speak to me. It doesn't bother my ego that much. But anyway, I had some paperwork in my hand, and I knew that I had to do what I call an ambush, but I had to make a point in committee that was a surprise to her, that would be embarrassing in public and on television in order to put the brakes on the thing I forgot. I don't know what it's called. So as I'm walking to the Judiciary Committee, I'm thinking, you know, this will be the third confrontation with a committee chair in 24 hours. Most members don't want to ever have that. And I thought, kind of like that milk in the cows when it's 20 below, do I really want to do this? And then I had this rational thought that came to me immediately behind that, which was, if she knew this was coming, who would dread it more, her or me? And the answer is, she would dread it more. There's no doubt about it. And if the day comes that I dread it more than they do, they win and our side loses. So I know that there's a high urgency to what we do. Many of those things will not be something that you'll know about, that you'll see. They may not make the media or the press. For example, and by the way, I think I won that confrontation, and she dreads more the confrontations between me. But a year or two ago, when we were ready to shut down a Congress, toward the end, it was maybe 30 days out, something like that. They decided to bring this amnesty bill that would have granted amnesty to 557,000 people with one stroke of the pen. It's a little long and complicated, but that's the bottom line of it. And so I decided I am going to kill this thing. Now, I don't have the power to do that. They can run over, they can do anything they want to do in Congress. I don't have the power to do it, but I can tactically make them pay such a price that it's not worth it for them. Well, so they brought this 557,000 amnesty bill, and we only found out about it about 10 o'clock the night before. I called my staff together, and I've got some committee staff as well as my staff in our office, and I said, we're going to mount an effort on this. Send an email out to the other members so that they get stacked up to help as much as we can get them. Well, anyway, my staff stayed up nearly all night writing amendments to this amnesty bill, and it was a cart, not exactly like a grocery cart, but it looked similar to it. It'd be almost a grocery cart full of amendments. And then they called a committee hearing together, and inside of 2 hours, the other Republicans had done what they were willing to do, and they offered their little amendments, and then they left. And they weren't coming back. And I knew that. And I'm sitting there alone against sometimes 9 Democrats in the immigration subcommittee. So I would offer one amendment that wasn't germane, and then we could argue that, I could argue it was, even though I knew it wasn't. And then they would argue it wasn't germane, and then they'd insist on their point of order, and then there would be a recorded vote, and I would challenge the ruling of the chair. I'd burn up like 18 minutes. And then I'd offer an amendment that was germane. And they would reserve a point of order, then they would concede their point of order, and then we would debate that, and they'd vote my amendment down. Then I'd bring one that wasn't germane, then one that was. And I alternated that, and they're really angry, you know, but they're angry at me in the first hour. And by the time we got into that evening, they were arguing. I got them arguing against each other, which was a pretty good deal. Now they're and some of their